There are moments in life when silence becomes the loudest answer, when people withdraw, when they stop calling, when the energy shifts, and suddenly you are left in the space between confusion and clarity. You ask yourself, why did they pull away? What did I do wrong? But in such moments, it's not always about others. It is a chance, a rare and powerful chance, to turn the gaze inward. In the Shaolin tradition, we are taught that true strength lies not in chasing after what is leaving, but in remaining centered in stillness. Life is not always about understanding why someone changed, ignored, or walked away. It's about what you do with the silence they leave behind. Do you collapse inward, or do you rise from it? If someone distances themselves from you, the space they create is not a punishment, it is a mirror. A mirror reflecting your attachment, your expectations, your inner fears. And yet, that same space can become a dojo, a place to train your patience, your clarity, your self-worth. So today, I invite you not to resist the distance, but to learn from it. Not to fear being ignored, but to find presence in solitude, because in the absence of noise, we begin to hear the voice that truly matters, our own, and that voice, if trained well, becomes unshakable. When someone distances themselves from you, the mind immediately begins to interpret this space as rejection. It's a natural reflex, a survival mechanism rooted in the fear of abandonment. But in the Shaolin philosophy, we are not taught to react, we are taught to observe. Observation is the first step to understanding, and understanding leads to transformation. So when you feel that someone has pulled away, that they no longer respond, that their energy has shifted, do not fall into the trap of interpreting their actions as a direct statement about your worth. This is not a moment of punishment. It is a moment of profound redirection. When people create distance, they are often responding to their own journey, their own internal shifts, their own struggles and stories. It is rarely about you, but the ego whispers otherwise. The ego wants to take things personally, to seek closure, to demand explanations. And yet, the path to inner mastery begins when you learn to sit in uncertainty without needing to fill the silence with assumptions. Every time you assume, you chain yourself to illusions. But when you accept the distance as it is, you begin to liberate yourself. Redirection is one of the most powerful forces in life. Sometimes the universe moves people away from us not to cause pain, but to create space, space for growth, space for reflection, space to realign with your true path. The absence of someone may be the presence of something greater trying to emerge within you. But to recognize this, you must let go of clinging to memories, clinging to identities, clinging to the image you had of the connection. The Shaolin way is to move with the flow of life, not against it. Resistance brings suffering, acceptance brings strength. When someone ignores you, you are given a rare opportunity to confront your own emotional dependence. Why does it hurt? Why does silence feel so loud? What part of you is craving to be seen, acknowledged, validated? These questions, though uncomfortable, are essential. They reveal the parts of yourself that need healing, the parts that have been outsourced to others. True power begins when you no longer rely on another's attention to feel whole. You become the source, not the seeker. Every time someone steps away, there is something within you that is being asked to step forward. Maybe it is your discipline, maybe your self-worth, maybe your patience, but always something is called into activation. Most people miss this opportunity because they are too focused on the other. They chase explanations, they try to win back affection, they beg for clarity. But in doing so, they abandon themselves. You must learn to remain with yourself in the absence of others, to stand tall even when no one is applauding. Redirection is not a detour, it is a deeper alignment. The path you are meant to walk sometimes requires the removal of those who are not meant to walk with you. And though the removal hurts, it clears the fog. Without their presence, you begin to see the parts of yourself that you neglected. You begin to build a relationship with your inner self, one that is not based on performance or pleasing, but on truth and presence. This is where wisdom begins, not in having all the answers, but in learning how to remain grounded when nothing makes sense. To master your mind, you must accept that not everyone is meant to stay, that people come and go, that energy shifts, that attention fades, but what must not fade is your inner clarity, your path, your practice. When someone ignores you, instead of shrinking, expand. Expand your awareness, expand your routine, expand your discipline. Use that space they created not as a void, but as a vessel, a container in which you pour your energy, your time, your devotion to growth. This redirection often feels like a loss, but it is not. It is a lesson wrapped in discomfort, a lesson in trust, trust in timing, trust in flow, trust in the intelligence of life, and most importantly, trust in yourself. You are not left behind. You are positioned for deeper connection with your own being. What you choose to do with that position determines your evolution. The monk does not chase shadows. He sits in the center of the temple and observes what the light reveals. There is a certain sting that comes when someone begins to ignore you. It's not loud. It doesn't scream. It whispers quietly, gnawing at your self-worth. You send a message and receive no reply. You try to connect, and there's only cold silence in return. The mind quickly races to find meaning in that silence, and often it interprets it as something wrong with you. You start to wonder if you are unimportant, if you are invisible, if you are somehow not enough. But this is where the true teaching begins, not from their response, but from your reaction. Being ignored is one of life's most silent teachers. It forces you to turn inward and ask, why does this affect me so deeply? The surface answer might be that you care. But deeper than that lies the real truth. We have become conditioned to seek our value in the eyes of others. Their attention becomes our validation. Their presence becomes our affirmation. And so when they withdraw, it feels like a part of us has been withdrawn too. This illusion must be broken if you are to walk the path of inner mastery. When you are ignored, it is not a signal to lower yourself to be noticed. It is an invitation to rise so high that being noticed is no longer your concern. In the Shaolin teachings, the focus is always on the self, not out of selfishness, but because all suffering originates from within. If your peace is easily disturbed by someone else's silence, then your peace was never rooted deeply. It was floating, dependent on their words, their texts, their smiles. True peace is not moved by absence. It is found in presence, your own presence. There is a sacred power in being okay with not being chosen, in not being prioritized, in not being seen, because in those moments you have a rare opportunity to see yourself without distortion. You begin to ask, who am I when no one is watching? That question is not a punishment. It is a doorway to self-respect, to self-care, to self-realization. And when you walk through it, you begin to build an identity that is not shaped by others' perception, but by your own inner clarity. Attention can be addictive. It feels like warmth, it feels like validation, it feels like belonging, but it can also be deceptive. You begin to crave the look, the reply, the affirmation, and little by little, you forget how to generate these feelings from within. Being ignored breaks that cycle. It removes the drug, and though withdrawal is painful, it is also healing. It teaches you to stop searching for light in others and start lighting the fire inside yourself. You are not invisible. You are simply being guided to visibility within. Sometimes life removes external recognition so that you are forced to recognize yourself. And this is where transformation happens, not when others notice you, but when you begin to notice yourself. Your thoughts, your reactions, your patterns, your worth. The monk trains in silence not because there is no sound, but because silence reveals everything. In the absence of noise, your inner voice becomes louder. And that voice, when nurtured, becomes the foundation of true confidence. People may ignore you for their own reasons, reasons you'll never understand, but your understanding is not the goal, your growth is. Each unanswered message, each missed call, each cold glance is not a reflection of who you are. It is a reminder of how deeply you still depend on others to define you. And once you realize that, you can begin the real work. The work of detachment, of discipline, of remembering your value regardless of who sees it. When you stop needing to be acknowledged to feel complete, you start living from a place of power. Your presence becomes rooted. Your energy becomes sovereign. You no longer shrink in someone's silence. Instead, you rise within it. You take their absence and turn it into fuel. You use it to meditate longer, to train harder, to focus deeper. You redirect your attention to yourself not out of spite, but out of self-respect. There is a point in the journey where external praise becomes irrelevant, where being seen or unseen makes no difference. Because your own eyes are finally open, you see yourself, you validate yourself, you walk with dignity, not because others cheer you on, but because you've learned to walk without applause. This is freedom. This is strength. And this is the kind of confidence no one can ignore, not because you force it upon the world, but because you embody it so completely that even silence cannot diminish it. Letting go is often mistaken for weakness. People associate it with giving up, surrendering, or not caring enough, but in reality, letting go, especially of those who distance themselves, is one of the highest forms of inner strength. It takes courage to release someone you once held close. It takes discipline to stop chasing answers, closure, or affection. The Shaolin path teaches that attachment is the root of suffering. When you grip tightly to what is no longer aligned with you, you create friction. That friction grows into emotional chaos, and you begin to fight against the natural flow of life. There is a reason the wind flows around obstacles and the water adapts to every curve of the riverbed. Nature does not cling, it moves, it transforms, it allows, but the human mind, especially when caught in emotion, resists this wisdom. When someone pulls away or begins to ignore you, the first instinct is to hold on tighter. You replay moments, you analyze conversations, you try to fix what feels broken, and yet, every ounce of energy you spend clinging to what wants to leave is energy drained from what is waiting to arrive. Letting go is not the same as closing your heart. It is not becoming cold or indifferent. It is learning how to keep your heart open while accepting that not everyone belongs in its sacred space forever. Some people come into your life as teachers, others as mirrors. Some stay for seasons, some for mere moments. But your task is not to force permanence in a world built on impermanence. Your task is to be present with what is, and to bow with grace when it changes. It takes great strength to say, "This is no longer for me," without bitterness, to walk away without needing revenge or recognition, to acknowledge someone's distance without internalizing it as rejection. This is what it means to grow. You realize that your peace is too valuable to be placed in someone else's inconsistent hands. You understand that holding on out of fear is more damaging than the pain of letting go. The warrior does not chase what flees. The warrior turns inward, refines the spirit, and walks forward with focus. In moments when you feel abandoned, forgotten, or unimportant, your mind will try to convince you that your worth has decreased. That if they had stayed, you would feel whole, but this is an illusion. No one has the power to take away what is truly yours. No one can remove your essence. Letting go is not about losing something valuable. It is about recognizing that you are valuable enough to release what no longer aligns with your path. Strength is not measured by how tightly you hold on. It is measured by how gracefully you release. It is found in your ability to breathe through discomfort, to move forward without dragging the weight of old expectations behind you, and most importantly, it is found in your choice to protect your inner peace above all else. The Shaolin monk does not allow the behavior of others to dictate the direction of his spirit. He does not beg for validation. He does not demand loyalty. He simply walks with presence, aware that every step forward is an act of self-respect. Letting go also means letting go of the story. the story you told yourself about what this relationship was supposed to be, the fantasy you built in your mind, the expectations you projected onto someone who may have never been ready to carry them. The mind creates stories, but the spirit seeks truth, and sometimes the truth is this: they were not meant to stay, they were not meant to see you fully, and that's okay, because your growth does not depend on their understanding, it depends on your own. In solitude, you learn what true connection feels like. You stop chasing temporary comfort and begin to cultivate lasting strength. You fill your time with purpose, your space with presence, your heart with practices that elevate you. And in doing so, you become someone who no longer needs to cling to what leaves, because you trust that what is meant for you will feel aligned, steady, and mutual. You stop needing to explain yourself to those who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop performing for those who have already looked away. The more you let go, the lighter you become, and with less weight, you move more freely. Your path becomes clearer, your energy returns. You remember who you are beneath the longing and the grief. The world does not end when someone walks away, it begins again, not because they left, but because you finally turned your energy inward. You stopped chasing and started building. You stopped waiting and started living. You became the steady presence you were always seeking in others. Solitude is often feared because it strips away the distractions we use to avoid facing ourselves. When no one is calling, when no messages arrive, when you are not included or remembered, there is a stillness that emerges. And for many, that stillness feels unbearable. It reveals the truth that has long been buried beneath noise, the truth that we have become dependent on being seen to feel alive. But in the Shaolin way, solitude is not isolation, it is sacred. It is the training ground where the mind is disciplined, the spirit is purified, and the self is remembered. In a world addicted to validation, the absence of attention can feel like punishment, but it is not. It is a moment of liberation disguised as loneliness. The space where no one is watching you becomes the space where you can finally observe yourself. There is no performance, no approval to chase, no image to uphold. Only you, your breath, and the truth that resides within. And this truth is not always comforting at first. It shows you your wounds, your insecurities, your inner chaos. But it also shows you your strength, your resilience, and your untapped potential. Discipline begins in this space. When no one is there to applaud you, do you still show up for your goals? When no one notices your effort, do you still give your best? This is where character is forged, not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. The monk does not train for attention. He trains because the practice itself is the reward. In the same way, your growth must become internal, not something you do to impress others, but something you commit to out of respect for your own life. Solitude reveals your patterns. It shows you where you've outsourced your happiness, where you've waited for others to motivate you, where you've allowed external forces to direct your internal state. And once you see these patterns clearly, you are no longer a prisoner to them. You begin to reclaim your power piece by piece. You realize that every time you waited for someone to see you, you were overlooking your own ability to be present with yourself. You realize that being alone is not a sign of lack. It is a sign of space being made for depth. You cannot hear your inner voice if the volume of the world is too loud. And so sometimes people pull away, not to hurt you, but to give you the silence required to meet yourself. And in that meeting, you find a presence that cannot be ignored, a light that does not flicker when others disappear. You begin to build rituals, early mornings of movement, quiet evenings of reflection, moments in the day where you breathe deeply and check in with your heart. These small practices are not visible to others, but they transform you from within. You learn to become your own companion, you speak kindly to yourself, you forgive yourself for past dependence, you offer yourself the loyalty you once begged others to give, and slowly you realize that you are not alone. You are with yourself, and that is more than enough. This is where peace is born, not from being surrounded, but from being centered, not from being chosen, but from choosing yourself daily. And from this peace, your energy changes. You no longer seek to be seen. You become the one who sees clearly. Solitude becomes strength when you stop fighting it. When you embrace the quiet not as emptiness but as fullness waiting to be felt. You read more, you learn more, you reflect more, you grow more, and this inner expansion begins to shape the outer world. You no longer attract connections out of need, but from wholeness. You no longer tolerate crumbs of attention because you've learned to nourish yourself fully. You no longer fear being alone because you've discovered how deeply alive you can be in your own company. There is a power in becoming the person who does not need to be reminded of their worth, who wakes up and walks with intention even if no one is watching, who meditates in the silence, trains in the shadows, and smiles without reason. This is the quiet power that solitude creates. It doesn't shout, it doesn't seek, it simply exists steady and grounded, and from that grounded place everything else begins to shift. People may come and go, but you remain rooted. You remain aware, you remain free. So in the moments when they distance themselves, when their silence becomes louder than their words, and when their absence begins to echo in your life, remember this. You are not being rejected. You are being redirected. You are not being diminished. You are being reminded of your own light. Their withdrawal is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your awakening. You were never meant to be defined by someone else's presence, nor broken by their absence. True strength is found in the way you rise when no one is watching. True peace is discovered in how you sit with yourself when all distractions are gone. And true power is born the moment you no longer chase validation, but instead walk with quiet confidence, rooted in who you are. In the stillness they leave behind, build yourself. In the silence they offer, listen to your truth. And in the space they create, grow. Not to prove them wrong, but to become someone who no longer needs to be proved right. Because the one who walks alone and still walks forward, that one is unstoppable.